Welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Brandon here with Brayden, and today we're looking at Azure Lane. Brayden, this is your list. What do you got for us?
Thanks for having me. It's always great to be back. But we've got Bar Salvage. This is a very common list that we've seen on the Japanese side in tournaments, seeing pretty decent results, even nowadays, even though the set's been out for just a little while. Deck's pretty fun to play with, and most of the Azure Lane lists will resolve around like the same early game packages, but can swap in and out these top end things. So we'll hop right in. The first and most important two cards in Azure Lane probably are the two cats. We have Fuso and Yamashiro. Yamashiro is a vanilla 3K, but she gets all sorts of better once we play the Fuso. So Fuso will become a 3/5 and 2 soul if the Yamashiro is on the board. And then she also grants the Yamashiro another 1,000 power and another soul, turning your vanilla into a 4K 2 soul and making basically what you get is a weird dual laner type scenario where with just one of each on the board, you have a 3/5 and a 4K both swinging for 2 soul. The biggest thing with the Fuso is that she stacks multiple effects on the Yamashiro. So you can have like 2 of each on the board, and you'll have a 3/5 2 soul and 2 5K 3 soul units starting from like going second, which just means you like win 0 and your opponent instantly goes to 1 most of the times, and your opponent usually cannot just deal with that amount of damage rush, and that is the name of the game for most of these Azure Lane lists, is how many times can you field cats and push this extra damage.
Well, and it's actually a big deal too that they can get the Yamashiro as well by just ditching a character, right? When it's placed on stage, to be able to search it out, get it, and get it in right place, so you don't even have to worry about having them both in hand at the start of the game. You can go out and search it.
Yeah, it's honestly a little ridiculous. It adds it to hand too, which is kind of important, which is different than, say, some of the other spawners that we've seen in other sets that work with these vanillas that'll usually just summon them to board only. The other big difference from those other spawning sets is that the Fuso works from the back row, so you can go ahead and do like the double play. Some of the other like vanilla supports only work from the front row when they also spawn, notably Avatar: The Last Airbender's Ember Island cast. So yeah, Azure Lane's general game plan is spam as many cats as you can. When your opponent, you shorten the game by like an extra whole turn in the early game just because of how much damage you're pushing at 0 and on first deck. However, we have a whole rest of a deck to look through, so let's take a look at these. The next probably staple card that we're pretty familiar with seeing is this Riki. It's blue, which is actually very important. Pay 1, put a character from your waiting room into bottom of clock, so it sets color, which is important for the Bar Salvage lists. It sets your color, and it can also help set your experience requirements, because we do play a lot of these off finishers with these heavy experience requirements in the late game. And then search for a level 1 or lower, add it to hand, standard Riki, on play Riki effect. It has a nice little second effect where at the start of your climax phase you can top check for a level 2 or higher, and if you do, you get a global 500 for free. Extra power pump on cats, extra power pump on your level 1 board. Just helps to like clear like the extra little bit of power that just sort of comes up every so often. Not the biggest deal, but it does like help in some scenarios. The next major part of most Azure Lane lists that we're seeing out of Japan is the Brainstorm, this Tai-Ho Brainstorm. First, the Brainstorm, it's just a standard check 3 Brainstorm. So every climax you hit, look at 3, add anything you want from among them, and then ditch the rest. The main draw of this Brainstorm, though, is the climax combo, where it will bounce to hand when you play her bar combo. If you do, you get to stock a warship from waiting room. So what this effectively does is it pays for its own Brainstorm on the following turn, allowing you to like rip through your deck incredibly fast, especially once you start hitting more and more of these Brainstorms. So your deck speed is really good. You're not as susceptible to like something like Cats in the mirror matchup, where your opponent's trying to take advantage of your first deck state. It also digs for its own climax. So what you can do is, starting from like turn, like going second, your first turn, you can slam Fuso, search for Yamashiro, play another 0, either another Fuso or Yamashiro would be like the best, and then slam like a Brainstorm or like 1 or 2 Brainstorm in the back row. And then you just get to slam bar if you open that. You can start comboing as early as like the second turn of the game, and it just goes. If your opponent cannot cancel in first deck, they will end up at like 1-4 on like their next turn, on their like second turn of the game, after they only have 1 stock, which can be incredibly debilitating to some of these decks, specifically things like Alice that really require these strong stock thresholds, or decks that like a Hololive that also require a minimal amount of stock in order to like use their clock plus effects. If they do cancel, you still have a board of like 5k vanillas effectively, which are very likely to live to the next turn, and you went plus on stock in order to Brainstorm the next turn. So other zeros that we have in the list, so we have in the Salvage list, we're running the red U96 Climax Swapper. Basic Climax Swapper on play. It's also just a 3k as long as you have some other characters on board. Nothing too interesting. I believe the green one is actually better just because it grants power elsewhere, but we need the red in this list sometimes, so we are running the red Climax Swapper. The next singular tech card, we're running the U110. This is here effectively to guarantee our experience requirements. It is also a spammable Brainstorm, a Salvage Ditch Brainstorm. If you really need that deck speed, you could definitely have the stock to use that. But it's mostly there to tap down if you like whiff an experience requirement, or you're whiffing a color requirement for your top end. And the last singular tech card at 0, we're playing the Z24 in my list. Other people have flexed basically anything you want into this slot, including like another Climax Swapper would probably be like another great choice. But this is a pay 1, pitch 1, look at X, and add anything to hand. X is your opponent's characters. Because you're spamming a lot of zeros, specifically Cats, and your back row is also bouncing to hand quite frequently, you're trying to loop your bar combo as much as you can, so getting a Climax, or more specifically the bar, into your hand is pretty important, especially if you want to like side with your Cats, which is a real option. This is just a little bit of extra dig in order to get there, and your opponent will usually have a decent sized board at any time past 0. And then it also has a nice little extra effect. When your opponent plays a Climax, you can stock charge the Z24. So usually this is a card you don't need to play more than like once per game, and after you do, you can just shove it to stock when your opponent responds. So going into level 1, we have this submarine. I don't remember what her name is, but she is just a standard drop search. And then she also has, if you have 2 or more on play, draw a card, ditch a card. So just a little extra filter, a little extra dig, some selection in this deck, because one of the main problems running this level 0 Taiho combo is that your selection for your top end is pretty poor. One of our main filter cards we'll see up next doesn't select very well for 3s. So this is the quick fix solution for that. Also being in blue is important for some of our off finishers and tech pieces at the top end, which is a big part of why all our level 1 lineup is blue. The next card is that costless filter. This is on play Rico, which really lets us utilize this really strong level 0 game that we have. And then it also just has on attack, give 1,000 power somewhere, which comes up a little bit here and there. Our level 1 line is fairly small, or at least our costless level 1 line. And our zeros, our cats, sit around the same power level as those. But so having a little extra power to hit that like 5k mark is important for making sure that you can get over like some of these other combos that like are on turn power, or just like costless on attack combos from other 1k1 decks. So it lets us just scale those and put on just a little bit of pressure, just enough to get over them. But on play Rico is broken, so we run 4 of it. It's also, again, blue, which helps us tech in for our top end. And our last level 1 piece, this is more for our top end as well. This is a 1175 with Clock Encore. It sets color with its Clock Encore. But it's mostly here to be sacked in the battle phase so that we can maintain full board with our off finisher effect. So we are hard fielding this as well. This is not standby. But again, it's also blue, which is huge for making sure we have our critical mass of blue, because our level swap will be trying to focus on red. We need to have enough blue to just naturally have it. You have anything to say about the level 1 lineup?
You have the level 1s as just more fixing tools or tools to set up for the end game, so realistically you're just spamming cats still at this point.
Yeah, like I said, the name of the game, spam Fuso and Yamashiro as much as you can. Big soul damage is big soul damage. So unfortunately, this deck I feel like has a rough matchup against some of these current wall decks in the meta, so things like Alice and Muron, especially if they can get rolling, because the numbers you're swinging for are actually so large, and those decks compress at like a very nice rate, especially Slime. Sometimes you can struggle to actually get sticking damage in just because of the soul damage that you're trying to push out. So looking at our top end, though, we can start looking at it. We do run 2 copies of the 4 more early play. This is the only early play healer in the set, so luckily it's in green. Being a green level 3 is also really nice for having green experience, because we require experience 8 for some of our cards at the top. The 2k global pump just makes her an 11k on turn, and it does pump your cats up to like 6k with Climax, which is not like the most impressive thing, but sometimes that's relevant. It's mostly there just as a healer, and then green experience. So getting into our off finishers, I guess, we have this green level 3, experience 8, it gains 15, and the following ability, pay 3, pitch 1, on attack, burn 2, and then it's also a stock healer. So this is a big stock outlet, because our deck mostly generates a lot of stock and not like a ton of hand. Having these big stock gated off finisher effects is really nice. So just an on attack deal 2 damage is really nice. It swings in at 11, 12 with Climax. Just really good. Being a stock healer also lets us flex our stock in hand a little bit more in some matchups, especially if something like, say, Grisaya 2 comes out and Grisaya makes a resurgence, or something else gets anti-heal at some point. Having stock heal is always just like a good option. Our next green level 3, or the last green level 3, also has experience 8, becomes a 10-5 with hand encore. It has pay 1, pitch 1 on direct attack to burn 1, so similar to like the Albedo from the Overlord trial deck. But how are we getting direct lanes? Early play is like fairly small off turn when we're like crashing lanes like all game. On place, if you have experience 8 again, bounce 2 characters from your opponent's board. So this is how we deal with big problem like walling decks, things like Sora and Exol, things like Meliodas, which has been popping up a little bit more recently. Anything that's got nasty cross-turn effects, we can just remove them from the game. Some cross-turn effects don't affect us, like the anti-burns, like we don't need to go into the burn off finisher. Our primary off finisher is actually a restander, so we don't actually care about anti-auto damage from something like Kasumi, but having just a nice instant out to, like, say something like standby if they have a large board that you can't deal with, or a wall that they're threatening backups with. Just having bounce 2 is really a really nice effect to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to remove 2 characters with just 1 card is definitely worthwhile, especially at the top, to try to close out games, for sure.
Mm-hmm. The other big thing with that, it's green, it's level 3, it makes experience 8 happen. That's why we run a 15 count of level 3s. So we do need these big experience payoffs. So then the last finisher, we have this blue level 3. At the end of this card's attack, if you have 4 more other characters, you can pay 2, pitch a card, and sack a card on your board to restand this character. So this is where that blue 1/1 comes back into play. If we want to field multiples of this, which that is what we're aiming to do, we need to maintain full board, which means we need to sack a character and then encore it back. There are cases where you can just pay 3 encore. However, clocking yourself 1 tends to be the easier play, as long as you have the extra clock to work with. And then this also has on attack. If you have experience 6, it becomes a 13, 14k with climax. So just a really nice body. But our main goal is to restand and then manipulate that restand with our finisher. But we'll first, before we cover that finisher, we'll cover our last auxiliary level 3. We are running 2 of a Fumio. Everybody loves Fumio. This is our main decompression tool. Shuffling back all but 1 climax, usually pretty good, especially considering the nature of our finisher and the nature of our game plan of swinging for larger numbers and not trying to stick lots of small instances of damage. We can play that finisher with the small instances of damage, and Fumio is still a very good option for that, but our primary decompression and the main reason we're teching into blue, besides the restander, is for this. It also has on attack pump power or gain power, so it'll swing in at like 14, 15k with climax. So it's also just another big size body, especially if you bounce something or if you're like restanding. It's the threat of having Fumio that makes it like what it is. And then we come to our finisher, which is Bismarck. This is the main reason we have any red in the deck. At some point, you will probably level one of your Bismarcks. However, you only need 1 Bismarck on the board. Our primary finishing board will be 1 Bismarck and double restander. And that is because her on-play ability first is check 3, add 1. So she digs for her own climax. She digs for restands. She digs for Fumio. She digs for the 1/1 with encore if you don't have it. She can dig for climax swap as well. That's another common play, but on play dig 3 is really nice, considering that we're already playing 4 healers in our green. And then she has, when the climax, the salvage climax, is placed in your climax area, and this is in the front row, you can pay 1, pitch 1 on climax placement. You have to remember that. All your other characters get Mocha for 2. So look at the top 2 of your opponent's deck, mill what you don't want there, and put the rest back on top. So the way this interacts and the way that you're trying to close the game is you're fielding double restander and 1/1 encore in the back row, and then 1 Bismarck in the front row. You play the climax, and then you get double restand, and each of those attacks with your restands maintains the Mocha. So you get to Mocha for 2, attack, Mocha for 2, attack, swing with Bismarck, Mocha for 2, attack again, and then Mocha for 2, and attack again. So you get 4 Mochas with 5 attacks. The numbers on this, I haven't run the calcs or done the simulations with this, but the numbers feel pretty good. It lets you leverage some stuff. The other big thing with giving Mochas, you can actually give our green off finisher Mocha for 2, and then on attack burn 2 for guaranteed 2 damage if you see 2 clean. Helps us chip the game out really effectively. there's a lot of really fun things you can do with the Bismarck combo. It interacts really fun with the a lot of the off finishers the set has access to. So that, in general, what we're looking for. That's why we have to run the 1/1 with Encore, because if we want to restand 2 different characters, we need to maintain full board, and we have to sack a character in combat as part of that cost. And then if you stack that with Fumio, you can end up pushing quite a bit of damage as just like raw, clean damage in. So anti-burn won't really have a lot of effect on you. But that's the general rundown of this list of Azur Lane. There's a handful of other changes you can make. The other successful lists that have been seeing play are 8-bar running the, it's similar to like the Alice top end of the Asuna top end of Sword Art, where it mills your own deck and then burns for the number of climaxes milled. Very potent like pings at the top, especially if you can get incredibly compressed running your Taiho combo. Plenty of people running 8 pants because of a really good resonate package. 8 choice is fun. But a lot of the lists we're seeing out of Japan are running cats, the Taiho Brainstorm, and then some red or green top end. And then that's my starting list. This is where I'll be starting from with Azur Lane when it comes out soon. If you're interested in more lists, you can check out my Encore decks list. I go by Yacho1. Brandon will probably have the link to that in the description or something.
Yep.
I've always got something cooking on there. I've got plenty of other lists. I play a lot of sets in this game, so I have something that'll probably appeal to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really like this list. I like the flexibility you have at the top, especially to be able to kind of adjust and change. You have the flexibility to make sure you guarantee those experience conditions that you need. And I think the Mocha combined with the restand, especially being able to dual lane that restand, really sets up some really interesting plays there. Especially when you're faced off against decks that have some level 2 lineups, you actually have some really nice like side options there, not needing the reverse for it too. So you can kind of do some precise damage things as well.
Yeah, that's most of the name of the game for Azur Lane. Push a lot of damage early, and then try to modulate your damage at the top to like find the good closing numbers. And that, I feel like, will be the real strength of this list as it comes over to English. I don't think this is the strongest deck coming out at this point compared to some of the monsters we've seen recently. However, we are filming this right before the announcement stream. Hopefully we'll see some other sets come out, and maybe we'll see some other sets get hit a little. Hopefully. I pray hopefully.
Yeah, we haven't seen ban list hits in the English stream for Weiss as of yet. We never know what we might get in an English stream. So hopefully this deck seems interesting to you. If you're interested in playing it, absolutely. If you're looking at some other of the Azur Lane material, Brayden's decks are also in the description below as well. Feel free to check them out, and hopefully you'll be able to find something you enjoy as well. But that's been us here at the Clock Tower. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube thing. Until next time, have a good one.